Anyway, so let's get started. Thank you all for showing up, and a special thank you for Mary LeMay, who was our special guest speaker for today to talk about the St. Louis region's logistic hub infrastructure and global competitiveness. So Mary, thank you. And again, welcome to the Commercial Realtors. And with having said that, I would say I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, perfect. So help me how I can pull up my PowerPoint.
Share screen at the bottom there on the toolbar.
Okay. Oh yeah, got it.
It should be, if it's on your desktop, you should be able to share it.
It is.
And for all the attendees, what I would ask is we're going to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So if during the presentation you have a question, if you could type it in there. And then after the presentation, we'll just, Mark and I'll run through the list and share your questions with Mary.
Okay, can you see my PowerPoint now?
It's not open yet. I see a list of PowerPoints.
Oh, it's not?
On
my screen, I've got it.
Double click on that where on the, your screen's open?
Yeah, I've got it on mine.
Stop share. There you go. We're up.
Is that it?
That's
but you
it.
need to go into slideshow mode.
Okay, are we good now?
You got it.
All right, perfect. All right, well, first let me kick off and thank all of you for including me with today's program. As the title implies, I want to give you a quick update as far as what our role is at a national and global level as it relates to logistics, and then kind of bring it down to a local level as far as what the role all of us have to play. I am an employee of Bi-State Development. I am one of 5 business enterprises, St. Louis Regional Freightway. On this map, you can see the 8 counties that I represent on both sides of the river. We have been in operation for a little over 5 years. First year, we wanted to focus on bringing more recognition to the region based on those freight assets. We had found that as a region, we had been out-hustled by our peer cities like Memphis, Nashville, Columbus, Indianapolis as it relates to manufacturing logistics. So the first year we wanted to start marketing what those freight assets were, not only at a global and national level, but to our community so that we could kind of turn everybody into transportation ambassadors. So those freight assets focus on the fact that, number one, we have a tremendous geographic advantage on the Mississippi River. We are the most strategic location. We are ice-free and lock-free. And what that really means from the barge industry, you want to get your barges as far north up to the St. Louis area and take advantage of those low transportation rates. Once you go north of the St. Louis area, you will incur delays because of ice and lock and dams. The lock and dams act as traffic signals, adding additional cost to your transportation. 6 Class 1 railroads. What that basically means, you have a direct route to anywhere in the United States because we have the 6 carriers in this area. 4 interstates. If you compare ourselves to our peer cities, we have moderate rail congestion, highway congestion, and then we have 2 international cargo airports. Both of those airports have available space within the airports and developable land. Here's the messaging on that. When I mention those peer cities, not one of them have 4 interstates. Not one of them have 2 international cargo airports. No one has 6 Class 1 railroads, and no one can take that fantastic geographic advantage away from us. But yet, when it comes to manufacturing and logistics, those regions continue to seem like they are excelling when it comes to growth. So 3 years ago, we launched a series of press releases talking about this. Good news, bad news. Good news is we knocked it out of the park. We earned almost $1 million in media coverage. So that means if I paid for that advertising, I would have spent almost $1 million. Bad news is nobody knew anything about it. Good news is we're making tremendous progress. We're also considered the most efficient inland port, 2nd largest inland port, 3rd largest rail hub, so we have national rankings. This is another way that, again, our target market is manufacturing logistics. They're interested in the intermodal component. Just to give you a quick 101 on intermodal, these are the containers that you see driving up and down the interstate. They are typically railed to the St. Louis area by the East Coast or West Coast, and then they are put on a truck and moved in and out. When we talk about intermodal, this is what manufacturing logistics companies are talking about. The barge component, this is an example of a barge terminal facility where we're moving product to and from barges. All right, this slide's really important. This really sums it all up. For the St. Louis area, this is why we are a global logistics. We have the infrastructure in place for everything that I just mentioned. If gas prices are super high, at 1 o'clock, a trader can instantly call and say, hey, send that to St. Louis. I want my commodity to instantly get moved to rail. And for everything I just mentioned, you can do that in a matter of an hour. If gas prices plummet and they instantly want to move their product to trucking, again, we have the infrastructure and the access to all those logistics I mentioned to take care of that. For all those regions, we branded ourselves as Ag Coast of America. Nowhere else on the inland waterway system has the barge capabilities that we have. From a media perspective, when we sent a press release out, branding ourselves of this global recognition for it. Last year, we took it to the next level. We not only focused on the transportation component, but we focused on what our role is as far as helping solve the world food scarcity challenges. And we recognize the fact that we are in the center of ag production within the United States. And we also are the international leader when it comes to ag tech. And you can see on this slide, I'm recognizing 2 of the companies that have that international presence that are helping us out in St. Charles County. We've launched the FreightWeek.com website. This is a tool that not only are we streamlining it for manufacturing logistics companies, but part of our target market are site selectors and real estate entities. And that's where we have an interactive map. Anything you want to know about those intermodal sites, the barge industry, you can click on it and find immediate information about the specific comments. Target market for site selectors and brokers. Included with that website, we have streamlined that process. If you are a site selector in New York or Chicago or California, you want to know where the go-to manufacturing logistics sites for our region are, we have vetted those sites and they are on this website. And you can click on any of those icons on there and instantly get a fact sheet, and they're welcome to contact our office or the broker or developer directly. This is another example when we're sending press releases out to trade magazines for site selectors and brokers. This is how we are marketing that industry, and we're focusing on where are the areas that we've had the most activity and opportunity for growth. And that's where we're into name brands, and we're name dropping those global companies. Basically, we want their competitors to see what's going on in the St. Louis area and start focusing on this area. These are examples of some of the press releases we've sent out over the last 12 months. Let's talk about global, what's going on. The ocean carriers continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is a photograph of what those ships look like. And I mentioned those containers that you see being transported on the interstate. Many times they are coming to the US on ships like this. So what does that mean for the St. Louis area and the Midwest? Because those ships are getting bigger and bigger, the coastal ports that you see highlighted with these circles have been investing billions of dollars. In fact, Savannah in Georgia, you can see on this map, has been investing $3 billion. That says 3.8 million. It's actually $3 billion. They are self-funding that because their growth is so immense. Here's what it means to the Midwest and the St. Louis. They're basically investing to be big ship ready. And by doing that, they have more containers coming into their ports, and now they need to push those containers further into the US. For all the points that I've just mentioned, we stand ready for those growth opportunities. Another thing that we're working on is a new way to transport freight up and down the Mississippi. This industry is all about finding the cheapest and fastest way to transport freight. And we're in the process of trying to partner with a group from Southern Louisiana to ship containers up and down the Mississippi River in an incredibly efficient way. And this is our container and vessel and container and barge initiative that we're working on. I'm going to change gears real quick to transportation. One of the weaknesses we had several years ago is when we were investing our infrastructure dollars, we weren't working with all modes of transportation, with rail, with barge, and with our airports. As a result of that, we have been working with them over the last 4 years, and we've had some very significant wins. Starting out with one of our region's highest priority projects is the Merchants Rail Bridge. This project is funded under construction. Again, if you're in the manufacturing logistics company, you want the fastest and cheapest route. When this project is done in 2022, we will now have 2 tracks crossing this bridge, which will then help us out with efficiency and reliability and cost. Another big win we've had because of these public-private partnerships is the fact that our bi-state region, we have secured over $600 million for investing on 270. So again, what that means is we already have a fantastic transportation system. We are continuing to invest in it, which means we're going to continue to be competitive, but it's also going to allow us to be even more competitive. How we do that, we get testimony. We work with those manufacturing companies. We're trying to figure out how can we tell a better story to allow our DOTs and our elected leaders at a state and federal level to better compete for funding. This is an example. We went to Wentzville and we said, do you support funding for Interstate 70 and 270? And they said yes. And we're like, tell us why. And they said, we'll tell you why. From an efficiency perspective, our first shift is having to be held over once or twice a month. And we're having to pay them overtime to gap for the second shift in the afternoon because those workers continue to be delayed because of congestion on Interstate 70. That's the type of testimony we're giving to the DOTs and to our elected leaders. And this is basically saying this is impacting our ability and our efficiency for manufacturing in the United States, and it's holding them back from a global perspective and allowing us to be less competitive. And so by investing in Interstate 70, this is how we're going to support those manufacturing companies and allow our supply chain to be more cost effective. This is an example of fantastic bi-state regional support. When we compete for these infrastructure dollars, we go to those manufacturing companies and we ask for letters of support. This is where you've got letters of support from True Manufacturing and Weekends Only. They sent letters of support for projects for both IDOT and MoDOT. This is another example of, again, how we're trying to get the attention of site selectors to focus on the St. Louis region. They're interested in numbers, statistics, and metrics. This is showing the locations in our region that have had very significant industrial real estate movement. These are where the spec warehouses are. This is where the most activity is taking place. You can see on this a tremendous amount is taking place in St. Charles County. And what we're trying to focus on is the 1 million square foot areas. And that's where we get their attention when they see 1 million square feet here, 4 million square foot, 3 million square feet. And then below that, we're name dropping. We want those competitors to see Duke Realty is working in this area. Panettone, this is where they're taking advantage of that market. We want those competitors to make sure that, or to let them know they're missing out on opportunities. Moving forward, we want to continue to invest in that infrastructure. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to announce the updated 2021 infrastructure list. Interstate 70 has always been on that list as a high priority, but we're going to switch it up and we're going to focus on, now we need you to focus on these specific projects on Interstate 70. They focus on in St. Charles County, the section between Convention Center Boulevard and 370, adding additional lanes on 70 in O'Fallon, and obviously addressing the Wentzville curve improvements. Moving forward, we're going to release another industrial real estate market. Again, that target market are brokers and site selectors. We need that testimony from our manufacturing companies. This gives you a snapshot of some of the companies we're trying to get a hold of to get that testimony. When we release that, and we will share that with this organization, a lot of the effort is going to be focusing on the Interstate 70 corridor. We obviously have knocked it out of the park for funding for Interstate 270 over the last 2 years. And moving forward, we're going to focus on how we can bring more attention for investing on the Interstate 70 corridor. Our strategy is, again, getting that testimony from our manufacturing and logistics companies. And the last 2 slides focus on how we have FreightWeek STL coming up in the next couple weeks. It's a virtual event. Here's the punchline for all of you. The media information that we are going to be generating. There'll be press releases. We will have tape panel discussions. And during that week, we will be releasing those to those outlets, again, trying to raise that awareness of our freight assets, of that manufacturing logistics market that we have. We'll also be releasing our 2021 infrastructure priority list and also that industrial real estate market. So again, target market focuses on manufacturing logistics, site selectors and brokers, And during this week, we are just going to be inundating them with really fantastic stuff that's taking place, not only in our region, what's happening at a global perspective, but also what's happening in the industry. And as we do that and tell that story, the emphasis is on the St. Louis area and letting them know we are open for business when it comes to manufacturing logistics. This is the place to be when it comes to these industries for growth and expansion. And then the last slide, I don't know if I still have a second. I obviously wanted to talk about the impacts of COVID, and I'm looking at this at a super high level. And I think one of the lessons we've learned based on the COVID-19 pandemic, and that is we have been extremely reliant on globalization. And that's where we're reliant for manufactured products like medical supplies from other countries. And I think the lessons learned is we need to regroup. And when it comes to other events, when it comes to supply chain disruptions and what our national priorities are, I think there's going to be a second look as far as how we need to regroup and localize that here in the United States and make sure we have those resources readily available here in this area. And for all the points that I just mentioned, as they're going through that thought process, can't think of a better location if they want to focus on more manufacturing as it relates to these challenges as here in the St. Louis area. So I think I gave you a 40-minute presentation in maybe 11 minutes.
Thank you very much. I mean, I think this is another one of the examples where using Zoom, we become much more disciplined than having a...
Yeah. So hopefully I got to the point and just gave you a quick interview. And like I said, for the St. Louis area, we've got tremendous things going on. I think we've done a fantastic job as far as getting that messaging out there, but we're not done. We still have a lot of work to do as far as infrastructure investment and continuing to share that message with those international, national leaders.
Hey, so I'll start off some of the question answers. If anybody has any questions, again, if you would just type them down the bottom and we'll read them out. When you look at space available to develop, how do you think we compare with those other competing cities that you talked about in accessibility?
So actually, I think we're doing very well. That's something that we're obviously marketing. And actually, that's some of the statistics and metrics that we're going to release in our upcoming industrial real estate market. One of the things that we're going to focus on is the confidence that our brokers have as far as investing on spec warehouses, and the fact that we've got several of them under construction. I think that's an indication of the confidence that they have in our market, that they don't have a signed tenant for that. They're risking and going ahead and putting that money up front and building spec warehouses with the confidence that we are going to be able to fill those buildings. In that industrial real estate newsletter that we're talking about, for better or worse, there's going to be 15 slides of statistics as it relates to that. But if you're in that industry, those are the metrics that they use to really gauge how robust we're doing. Obviously, with the title I have, my job is to find what those strengths are. They appreciate that, but the report card that we're going to release in the next couple of weeks really tells them how robust that is, and that's how they can gauge how we're doing compared to other markets. And right now, it's been very favorable for us.
Okay, thank you. Looking at some of the questions, one of the things we've heard about before is this port in Lincoln County. I think it's been referred to as the Port of Lincoln. How does that fit in? And do you know anything about this project or its current status?
So I've heard a lot about it. It's my understanding, I'm going to put it in the emerging category. So I don't think that that the land has been secured and is currently available. That's part of the criteria for our website when we're identifying these go-to locations as far as developer ready. At this point, I don't think it's developer ready. I still think there's a lot of legwork that needs to be done. So that I'm gonna categorize it as emerging. Here's one thing I can share with you. It has a tremendous strength. The BNSF Railroad goes through that area. When I have talked to the BNS Railroad as far as, hey, where are you considering as far as really tremendous intermodal sites in the St. Louis area? Where are those go-to locations? I thought they were going to talk about the Fenton location. I thought they were going to mention some of the other things I've talked about. And they said, no, we need a location, a mega site. We need a site that has 1,500 acres of land, something that we can get unit trains in and out. That Lincoln Port facility would certainly has the area that you would need. But again, it is not considered developer ready, and I would consider it emerging.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I think you kind of just touched on it before that last question. How would you define success for your operation?
I think, well, I think it comes down to, are we able to support our manufacturing logistics companies and provide the resources that they are able to expand and grow? So as far as expanding, obviously we need to focus on that workforce. We've been involved in some different efforts from that. The other part is, again, we've been out marketed by those peer cities, and we really haven't done a good job of telling the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Best Buys, why they need to come to this area. And that, I think, is kind of indicative of all the work that we've done over the last couple of years. As far as how I define success, when we release these industrial real estate market letters or newsletters, and we have those metrics that show that we are competitive at a national level, that's a win. That's basically saying we've got a lot of fantastic things going on in this area. Not everybody knows about it. And that's a win when we're able to share that information, raise that awareness, and help bring site selectors to this area. From an infrastructure perspective, how do I measure success? We worked really hard those first 2 years, again, with those public-private partnerships, working with the DOTs. And the last 2 years, I could not have asked for anything better. And the fact that we were able to, as a region, secure $600 million for 270s, that's a win, that's a success. $200 million for the Merchants Bridge, that's a win, that's a success. But our work's not done. And so that's where we're going to continue. And like I said, we still have 2 small projects on 270 that we're focusing on. And the next thing, obviously, our highest priority is in focusing on Interstate 70 and some of the other projects that we have on our project list.
Another question is, what about how do politics fit into this thing? You know, our state and local politicians, any resistance, any support? What's their reaction been to this?
Okay, so this is another success story. I worked for the Illinois Department of Transportation for about 23 years, and here's what I can tell you. So we obviously operate in a bi-state region. Never ever do 2 DOTs have money at the same time, and that's always a challenge. For the St. Louis region, this slide, I think, summarizes it, and that is, from a political perspective and working with their DOTs, we did a lot of work before 2018. This is where we pulled the private sector in. We built those relationships with MoDOT and IDOT and those elected leaders. We told that story, and we said, from a manufacturing logistics perspective, this is why we need to invest in 270. And that's where, when we worked with our elected leaders on both sides of the river, and we gave that testimony as far as Amazon has come to this region 3 to 4 times. They are investing on 70 and 270 because of the infrastructure. If we want to continue to be competitive in that global market, you need to invest in Interstate 270 and 70. Both operates on both sides of the river. They have a distribution facility in Muscoda, Illinois, and obviously have their facilities in St. Louis County, along with all of their contractors. Anheuser-Busch has manufacturing in the city of St. Louis, distribution facility in Madison County. Procter & Gamble, same way. They manufacture in the city of St. Louis, they distribute in Edwardsville, Illinois. These are the types of examples from a business perspective, why we need to invest in the infrastructure. That has seemed to be very helpful when we're working with our elected leaders and breaking down the challenges we've had in the past. And that is, they're now armed with really good reasons on why this is going to help our economy. And when you present it in that fashion, that seems to break down some of the barriers we've had in the past as far as the politics. And this is a way that we feel that we've been able to bring our elected leaders together and give them material for them to be able to be more successful with bringing infrastructure to this area.
Wow, great answer. Thank you. Again, if anyone has any questions, please type them down below. I don't have anything new at this
There's
time.
one more there, Rick. Mary, how many ports can our area support, do you think?
So one way of looking at, I don't think I've got that in the slide. Okay, so when we talk about ports, we have 4 to 5 public ports. So those are ports that are operated by a public entity, but more importantly, they provide some authority over all the barge terminals that operate in our area. So actually, this is what I was looking for. So on the Mississippi River, all these blue dots you see, these represent barge terminals. So I don't think it's a matter of how many ports that we have. Ports are actually governmental authorities that provide that connection between the DOTs and our elected leaders as far as policy, guidance, and infrastructure funding. From an infrastructure, from a barge terminal facility, I think we still have a tremendous amount of capacity. And that's for some of the things I mentioned as far as there is a tremendous need for food across the world. The barge industry offers one of the cheapest modes of transportation. They have a tremendous amount of capacity along this facility, along the inland waterway system. By maximizing the inland waterway system, we take trucks off the interstate. That removes congestion. It offers a lot from an environmental perspective, reducing air pollution. The barges obviously use very environmentally friendly fuel. So from a barge perspective, we have a tremendous amount of capacity. And so from a port perspective, typically those are just kind of governmental entities. I think we've got unlimited capacity when it comes to the barge industry.
Yeah.
Very good.
And when you see the one more there, Rick?
No, I don't have anything new on mine.
Okay, there's one more. Will Klein asked a question, Mary. Obviously, workforce is important. One concern we have heard is affordable housing for warehouse workers, most recently Amazon. Is that something investors are concerned with?
I tell you what, with the conversations I'm having, and actually that's one of the things we want to focus on in some of our future publications and what we've done in the past. We are focusing on the top 2 to 3 criteria that site selectors and brokers are focusing on. And typically, number 1, they're just focusing on workforce and that availability. The residential component, that seems to fall to the lower end of the things that we need. Number 1 is just that availability of that staff. For this area, we feel that we've got a population who is available that just doesn't have the skill set. And that's where, as far as having the residential resources, doesn't mean to be so much of an issue for that category. It's just a matter of trying to pair up that part of our population to the training opportunities and letting them be aware of these tremendous opportunities in these careers. And then the other top criteria that site selectors have mentioned is obviously we need a robust infrastructure system. And then the other part is quality of life. And that really comes into cost of living. What does it cost to live here? What are your salaries? And then, what does your community look like? So it's a factor, but if you're asking me the top 3 or 4 things, when we are trying to build those relationships with site selectors, those are the primary things that we've been focusing on.
There's one more here. Chuck Critty asks, can you elaborate on the connection with the Port of Savannah, Georgia?
Absolutely. So last year, we formed a partnership with the Port of Savannah. It's obviously one of the East Coast ports. That's the port that I mentioned that they are actually investing $3 billion. It is a tremendously high growth port. We are trying to position ourselves with the Port of Savannah to take advantage of the reduced rail transportation rates that they are able to offer. They're able to offer that when negotiated with Norfolk Southern and the CSX Railroad, because again, they've got the volume, that scale of economy. They have so many more containers coming in and having to push it out. They're able to negotiate lower rail rates. We're continuing to have those discussions. It's not a challenge. For better or worse, they are working with Memphis, and they reached out to Memphis 2 years ago We reached out to them again in an effort to be proactive. Again, in what I had mentioned as far as we've been out hustled when it comes to marketing. Part of marketing focuses on building relationships, and that's where we reached out to them. They were really impressed that we did that. We continue to reinforce that relationship. The biggest challenge we have right now is that they already have existing customers in Memphis, and they are cultivating those relationships. I haven't given up, and that's one of the roles that I have in working with our manufacturing companies as far as how we can elevate and continue to foster those relationships so that we can build enough demand for them to send those trains from Savannah directly to St. Louis so we can benefit from those reduced rail rates.
All right, that's all we've got on the Q&A, Rick.
Okay. Well, listen, Mary, thank you. That was a lot of information. Is there a chance we can get a copy of your slides?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll email you a link.
Okay, and then we'll add the link onto our commercial website. I think this has just been fascinating information. So again, I haven't seen any other questions. If that, I'll say thank you again, and we'll kind of adjourn the meeting.
All right, well, I appreciate the opportunity. And my last comment is, after Freight Week, we are going to have several press releases that I'm going to send your way. And for all of you and your members, if you find them of interest and as a tool to promote our region and to use with your customers and clients, that's what our primary goal is. So I'm going to encourage all of you to take advantage as we push this information out. Use this as a tool to help market our region and bring and raise that awareness.
And this webinar will be posted, is being recorded and will be posted on our website.
Okay, fantastic.
Oh, and you know, Mark, maybe what we should do is get this to John Sebring. John is our the state level version of Mark Stallman. So he works at the state level, and he's very involved in annually the MIPIM expo that's held in France, and it's where all these manufacturers look for areas. I think John would very much benefit from this information.
We will do that,
and again help promote what we have to offer here. So, okay. Well, listen again, Mary. Thank you, and wish everyone a great day.
Stay safe. Thank you.
Bye bye.